Calls the clerk order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. Gracious God of all creation, gathering in the hope and confidence of your presence in our midst, we open our hearts and minds to your wisdom and direction. Make our vision to be larger and wider than our small wishes. Make our resolve to be stronger than any immediate fleeting reward. Make our compassion to be deeper than our specific concerns. And as we seek to speak and listen well here in this chamber, may we be the voices not only for those of our citizens who are strong and loud, but also for those who are vulnerable and easily ignored. May we be the ears that are open not only to those whose voices charm and flatter us, but even more so to those that do not. May our resolve to serve well be a source of hope and encouragement, not only for those who already trust and admire us, but for those who do not and cannot. We acknowledge the limits of what we can ever hope to accomplish here apart from your blessing and your guidance. May this awareness make us both duly humble and rightly courageous. Mindful of the sacred trust which our fellow Minnesotans have given to us for a moment in time, may we become ever more worthy of that honor. And by serving them with noble intent, may we help to fashion a public society in which you, our God, are rightly honored. Amen.
The chaplain for the day is Reverend Michael Byron, St. Paschal Baylon Church, St. Paul, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th Session, 2014, 76 days, St. Paul, Minnesota, Wednesday, March 26, 2014.
There's no objection. Further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved by as corrected by the chief clerk. Representative Johnson, what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
I would like to announce that you may have noticed there's some royalty in the hall today, and I would like to introduce the dairy princesses and dairy ambassador from Nicollet County. They are Stacy Schugel, Megan Struess, and Emily Annexstead. And I would also like to introduce their advisor, Michelle Schrader, whom some of you may know as Michelle Dahman, who is a former legislative assistant in the House of Representatives. Welcome to the St. Paul.
Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection, those reports will be adopted. Hearing Hearing no objection, those reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading House File 263.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 653.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1585.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1981.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2117.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2147.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2213.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2227.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2276.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2319.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2324.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2405.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2445.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2474.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2482.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2525.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2541.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2582.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2605.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2659.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2660.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2719.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2751.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2762.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2912.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2939.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2945.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2947.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2989.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 38.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 3110.
Second reading. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading of Senate File 685.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 3301 through 3315.
First reading House files 3301 to 3315. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage of the Senate of the following Senate file herewith transmitted. Senate File 1737, an act relating to state government, signed Joanne M. Zoff, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 1737, an act relating to state government. Rosenthal moves that Senate File 1737, House File 2147, now in the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Represented without objection, so ordered. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, Murphy E. for the Committee on Rules, pursuant to Rules 121 and 333, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for today for Monday, March 31st, 2014. Senate File 1892, House File numbers 2219, 2190, 3188, 3072, and 2835, Senate File 2100, and House File numbers 2858 and 2663.
Representative Poppy, what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
I'd like to introduce some people that are with us today. This is the 17th year for FFA Day at the Capitol, so hopefully many legislators met with people in blue jackets. And they are here to represent the state. Officers are here today, and so I'm going to just introduce them by name. The President, Mallory Pagel. Vice President, Stuart Schumacher. Secretary, Brooke Wente. Treasurer, Dylan Antoff. Reporter, Brandon Roiger. And the Sentinel, Heidi Sloot. And I'd just like to welcome them. Thank you.
Motions and resolutions. Copies of non-controversial motions are at the front desk and online. If there's no objection, we'll take those motions first. Hearing no objection, those motions prevail.
McNamara moves that House File 3158 be recalled from the Committee on Ways and Means and re-referred to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources Policy.
Representative McNamara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's my motion. Mr. Speaker, we recently heard a bill in Environment, Natural Resources, and Ag Finance Committee and unfortunately a 13-page policy bill was added in the Finance Committee, having never been heard in Environment and Natural Resources Policy Committee. It's Representative Winkler's Toxic Free Kids Act. And Mr. Speaker and members, my motion is to send that bill to the Policy Committee where we have time to have a good discussion about the policy in that bill. It's far-reaching. And interestingly, Mr. Speaker and members, a very troubling second part of that, and I think if anybody in this room is either a lead or a chair of a policy committee, you should be aware of one of the other amendments that Chair Wagenius made. She offered an amendment, a technical amendment, that was her words, technical, that environment, natural resources, and agricultural policy, Article 2 in the bill, should be changed because of this 13-page bill being added. It now would be called the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Fiscal Implementation Provisions. So if anybody chairs a policy committee, I think you've just become the fiscal implementation provision, and the finance chair will now be doing your work. So members, I would appreciate your vote and look for the support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Falk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd ask you to not vote for this. Representative McNamara, we had a discussion, a lengthy one, in the Finance Committee. You were given wide latitude to ask any questions you wanted about the provisions in the Toxic Free Kids Act bill that was adopted. We had plenty of time. We listened to you ask all kinds of policy questions. I was chairing the meeting. I gave you wide latitude to go and have those questions addressed. And Representative McNamara, you need to tell the full story too. With respect to the technical amendment, Ms. Taylor informed us that Representative Wagenius did not request a technical change. It was brought by staff, including Mr. Bill Marks, that asked for that change to be made. You heard that as well as I did. So to go and complain about or try to pin that on somebody else is disingenuous. That was purely a technical amendment. Staff told us all in the committee that. And so to go and frame it in any other manner is unfortunate. And I would just ask members to vote against this.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I appreciate Representative Falk's comments there that these questions were allowed to be asked in the Finance Committee. As the person, I guess, from the minority who assigns my members to the appropriate committee, I actually put those members onto the Policy Committee, and I'd like to ask the Majority Leader to yield for a question, if she would.
She will yield. Representative Dowd.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Madam Majority Leader. I think that the problem for the minority here is we just want to make sure that this bill gets heard by the appropriate committee, and I know we've had a lot of back and forth discussions. My hope is that you will see that this is probably just the right thing to do, and that we can just send this to this committee, make sure it gets the stop in the committee it's supposed to, and I guess I'm asking you to yield. Will you accept that?
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Dowd. It sounds to me as though the committee has had quite a lengthy and full hearing on the issue, and so I think that the committee is doing its work and the bill will proceed.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Madam Majority Leader. The bill has not gone to the Environment Policy Committee, and I think that's the problem. So it has not had any testimony or any discussion by that committee. So that's the committee, I think, that obviously I think Representative McNamara has accurately described. The 13-page policy bill was inserted into this omnibus bill. That policy provision did not have any hearing in the Policy Committee, and I think we all understand that that's the right thing to do, the appropriate thing to do. So I'll ask one more time if she'll yield for a question, Mr. Speaker. She will yield. Representative Dowd. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Madam Majority Leader. Knowing that it has not happened, that it did not go to the Policy Committee, I'm asking that, knowing, and I know that we both know that's the right thing to do, that we send bills that have a certain issue area to the appropriate Policy Committee for a hearing. I'm asking again, then, can we just do the right thing here and send this to the Environment Policy Committee? Would you agree with that?
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Dowd. I recall that this body did vote to send this provision, this bill, from Environment Policy to Environment Finance for its deliberation, which we voted for, and we have done.
Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that we're kind of differing from our our practice here in the House to make sure that this bill gets its hearing in the appropriate committee. I'm disappointed. It looks really here like you're trying to skirt this committee for some reason or another. I don't know what that reason is, but I think the right thing to do here is make sure, members, that we send this bill to that appropriate Environment Policy Committee, where obviously with this provision now, it definitely deserves a hearing and belongs in that committee. So I'm asking the members, I guess, to do the right thing here, regardless of what we think may or may not have happened with this bill. It's pretty obvious this provision now does require that we send this bill to the Environment Policy Committee. So asking the members to just support the McNamara motion to send it there.
Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, that actually is my bill, and I'm not sure that the Environment Policy Committee really would need to hear the bill in any case. It's a consumer products bill related to certain chemicals. It was heard in the Commerce Committee. It was heard in the Health Committee. It's been heard in the Environment Finance Committee because there's some money in it for those provisions. So I'm not really sure that it actually would ever need to go to the Environment Policy Committee, which is what I said on the floor when we made that motion. This is consumer products. It is not regulation of the environment.
Representative McNamara.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Falk, I appreciate your noting that we had a good discussion in the Finance Committee, and I would agree with you. We did have a good discussion there. But I would remind members that when you sign up for a committee and a bill is referred to your committee, you expect to be part of the discussion. I think it would be fair to ask Representative Uglum, Representative Green, Representative Cornish, Representative Representative Isaacson, and Representative Purcell. Those are a half a dozen members on the House Natural Resources Environment Committee, Policy Committee, that never got to hear the bill. They never got to ask questions of the agency unless they serve on one of the other committees Representative Winkler mentioned. They signed up to be on the Environment Policy Committee to hear environmental issues. And folks, this is a very important environmental issue, and I certainly would hope you to support my motion. Thank you.
Representative Murphy.
Call.
Roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. And seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail.
Erickson S. moves that House File 2324, now in the General Register, be referred to the Committee on Education Policy.
Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is my motion. It has been past practice that when the word teacher appears in legislation, that a move is made to the Committee on Education Policy. That is what we did when we added occupational therapist and physical therapist to 179A.03 several years ago, and it should be what we do now. Furthermore, I want to remind members that in the mid-2000s, the Chisholm Teacher Association sued the School Board of Chisholm because the bargaining unit was trying to move unlicensed personnel into the bargaining unit, those who were serving in ECFE. The Supreme Court case ruled that the Chisholm School Board was in the right. So I think it's important that we have this discussion about teachers. Anytime the definition of teacher is before us, that education policy discuss that and discuss whether or not these are licensed personnel from either education or from another a part of government, whether it's under a health or otherwise. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like a roll call vote on this and make sure that past practice is honored so that we discuss this in education policy.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. Members, I would oppose this motion. There's no need to do this. We looked at this bill. Education policy, like most policy or all policy committees, concern themselves with the policy in front of them. We saw this purely as a labor issue. We're not doing any definitions of teachers in this small bill. The only questions that this bill really raises for us are labor questions, and so we did the appropriate motion of sending it to the appropriate policy committee. They vetted that discussion, or they had the discussion, they vetted the issue. I wasn't there, Representative Erickson, but I suspect they had the conversation that you wanted to have at that point. There's no need for the Education Policy Committee to have a labor discussion. We're going to be talking about education policy issues. And so I feel comfortable that this body has properly vetted this proposal in the area, in the committees that it needs to be vetted. Not necessary for us to do this. Quite frankly, members, at this point I don't have any committees scheduled again within our deadline. A motion like this at this point would basically end this bill. We don't even know what the Labor Committee has determined about this. I think it's proper for us to consider their determination here on the floor of the House as opposed to ending this bill by this motion. So, members, again, I would oppose this motion.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I happen to have been in the Labor Committee as we discussed this yesterday, and I did raise the question, why are we taking this in a teaching bill through labor? And we were told that that's where the chair was directed to take it. And when you look at the subdivision, as Representative Erickson talked about this, subdivision 18 of the statute 179.8.03, the very first word in there is teacher, followed by the definition of what a teacher is and what a teacher is not. And then when you get to the second point in here, it talks about physical therapists, occupational therapists, and now it asks to add art therapists, musical therapists, and audiologists. Some of these individuals are not licensed to practice as a teacher, but yet we're looking at putting them under here. And I concur with Representative Erickson's assessment that may have been both a labor issue and a teacher policy issue, and it really should go through education finance, and then it should have come to the Labor, Workplace, and Regulated Industries Committee. And so, members, I strongly encourage you from a process standpoint, if teacher means something to you, then you should refer this to education policy. If just putting some other folks under the term of teacher means something to you, then vote no. I encourage everyone to vote yes to preserve what the definition of a teacher is here in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Let me remind you again that when we move someone who is seen as a teacher in the public school arena into the bargaining unit, that person must be licensed. Not licensed as a teacher, but licensed in their profession. Neither art therapists nor music therapists are licensed. That's what the Chisholm lawsuit was about in the mid-2000s. When the bargaining unit tried to get ECFE personnel into the bargaining unit, ECFE personnel were not licensed. The School Board of Chisholm prevailed in that in the Minnesota Supreme Court. This is a discussion that we need to have in education policy. Audiologists are licensed by their profession through the Department of Health. but neither of the other two are. So, Mr. Speaker, it is imperative that we have this discussion in the Committee for Education Policy. I ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the motion. The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 71 nays, the motion does not prevail.
Doubt moving to amend the permanent rules of the House for the 88th session as follows. Amend House Rule 6.1 as follows.
Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You should have a copy of my motion coming around on your desks. This would amend House Rule 6.01. You can find that in your yellow guidebook to our sessions here on page 24. So if you want to follow along on page 24. This would basically bring us now, our rules and the names of our committees, into compliance with the new procedures of the Minnesota House, where we now will call our policy committees fiscal implementation committees. So this now would bring the rule book in compliance with the procedures here of the House. And if you follow along, you'll see how that changes the name of the policy committees, scratches policy, and adds fiscal implementation committee at the end of the committee name. So I would encourage members to support that. Obviously, as we learned with Representative McNamara's motion, that we're not sending policy bills now to policy committees. We're changing the name of the actual provision in the bill to the fiscal implementation portion of the bill. And now what we'd like to do is just bring the rules and the names of the committees into compliance with the new procedure. So we would call them the fiscal implementation committees. So, Mr. Speaker, I would appreciate a roll call on this motion as well.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Murphy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just looking quickly at the doubt motion here, first and foremost, the proposal eliminates all the finance committees, including the Committee on Taxes, which would be, I think, a different move on your part, not one that we maybe want to adopt. But more importantly than that, I have to say I have not had one single Minnesotan come to me and say, please, quickly, urgently, change the names of your committees. Holy buckets. That's the top of the agenda. Not one has come to me asking for that motion. But you know what they have asked us to do? Cut middle-class taxes. And they've asked us to tend to the infrastructure through a bonding bill that Representative Hausman is working on. And they've asked us to raise the minimum wage. Minnesotans are asking for that. Those are their priorities. We're working on that. What are we, in our 4th or 5th week? We've gotten a lot of work done for Minnesota already. We're going to get more done when we get off the floor, once we've dispensed with this motion. We are very focused on the work and the priorities of Minnesotans, and I would ask members to vote no on this so we can get back to work for the people of Minnesota.
Representative Doubt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I appreciate your comments, Representative Murphy. I also have heard from constituents, and I know that what constituents are telling me is that they'd like to have an opportunity to come to committee and testify on a bill. And I think what you've done here in the Minnesota House today, literally changing the name of a provision in a bill from policy to fiscal implementation so that you can avoid sending it to a committee, is taking a sharp stick and poking Minnesotans squarely in the eye. And to stand at your microphone and talk about what you think Minnesotans want you to be doing here while you with your other hand are poking them in the eye, I think is shameful. And you know exactly what you're doing. A policy bill in the Minnesota House goes to the appropriate policy area for that committee, for that issue area, and that, my friends, is what gives Minnesotans the ability to come in and participate in the process. Now, I know you get tired of me standing at my microphone lecturing you on the procedures of the Minnesota House since I'm the new guy here. But isn't it funny how the new guy has to point out to you when you trample on the rules, the procedures of this House, the People's House, continually, day after day after day. And I do apologize about this not being a complete list. Apparently the copying machine here did not copy the complete list, but we were changing all of the committee names. But Representative Murphy, I do agree that people, we deserve to treat them, and they deserve to be treated with respect. And respect isn't playing the three-card Monty or shell game that we've learned that Democrats love to play in the Minnesota House by hiding the legislation so that Minnesotans can't follow it. You know what? If this bill is good policy, if this section, Subdivision 2 of House Bill 3158 is such great policy, let's give it a hearing in the appropriate committee. And I'll ask you, Madam Majority Leader, I stood up on this House floor not more than 15 minutes ago and said, you know what, let's do the right thing. Let's do the right thing. Let's send this bill where it belongs. We all know that it belongs there. Let's not be too cute by half and literally change the name of the provision in the bill from policy to fiscal implementation as a way of getting around a committee. Members, we all know what's going on here. This isn't a mystery. We all know what's going on. For some reason, we don't want this bill to go to the committee. But you know what? It's in that committee where Minnesotans can come in and have their voice heard in the process and tell us whether they like this provision or not. And my next amendment to the rules might be that we don't call this the People's House. Because what the Democrats have done is taken the people out of the Minnesota House of Representatives. After this session, this isn't going to be the People's House. Democrats are making it very difficult by trampling on the rules, the traditions, the procedures of this body for Minnesotans to follow along. And it's our obligation to make sure that we include them in the process. If we're passing policies, and the Majority Leader stood up and gave a whole list of policies that Minnesotans will love coming out of this body, she forgot about a few. What have Democrats done in St. Paul? Given themselves and other politicians pay raises, exempted themselves from gift ban policies, building a $90 million Senate office building right across the street. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. And when we've got a policy that we just can't wait to get enacted into law, we just can't wait to get it enacted into law, what do? We can't get it through a certain committee, so we change the name of the provision so it can skip that committee. And what do we do in the process? We skip Minnesotans' ability to come in and give input on that provision. That's exactly how we got a $90 million Senate office building, by skipping the processes and the procedures and excluding Minnesotans from the process. That's exactly how we got a $90 million Senate office building. And you think Minnesotans are going to be proud of the way Democrats have treated them? I can't wait till the next election. And Mr. Speaker, I withdraw the
announcements. Representative Murphy. Oh, Representative Hansen, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Yesterday, the Legislative Audit Commission subcommittee met and narrowed down the topics from 103 topics that were suggested to 12. When you get back to your office and look in your in basket, you're going to find the list of 12, and we're asking you to vote on those and return your ballot by Friday, April 4th. So look in your in basket. You'll find a letter from the Audit Commission and return it by April 4th. Thank you.
Representative Paymar.
Speaker, the Public Safety Committee will meet at 4:15, I think in room 500 North.
Representative Carlson.
Members, Ways and Means Committee will meet, this is a reminder, at 10 a.m. Tomorrow morning in room 200, our usual room. Thank you.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The Government Operations Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in room 5.
Representative Huntley.
Mr. Speaker, the Health and Human Services Finance Committee will meet at 4:30, and the DFL members of the committee will meet immediately after session up one floor.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The members of the Housing, Finance, and Policy Committee will meet at 4 o'clock in room 500 South. Housing, Finance.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12 noon Friday, March 28, 2014.
Representative Murphy moves that when the House adjourn today, it adjourn until 12 noon Friday, March 28, 2014. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon Friday, March 28, 2014.